Welcome to the Canva STI, summer of 23. What we'll do is sort of dive in kind of right away and just do some work in the sense that we have Scarsdale folks, we have Edgemont folks. I want to make sure kind of everyone's on the same page because I'm not quite sure how Edgemont has their Canva set up. Scarsdale, we have ours set up as the super premium education discount, free, where we get all the stuff for free. So there may be some subtle discrepancies between some users, and for some of you, if you've already set up or logged in previously, you may be attached to two teams. You may have like your own team and your Scarsdale Schools team. There's going to be a difference on that. So we're going to kind of go, for at least the first bit of today, just kind of make sure everyone can get logged into Canva and understand sort of where the differences are. You know, if Edgemont doesn't have the super premium, that's just it's an easy matter of just requesting your IT department connect with Canva, and they'll basically just verify that it's a school, and they'll set it up. And it's really nice because then you get all the premium stuff for free. It just is all available. So what we'll do basically, just to sort of kick it off, I'm just going to do a quick walkthrough, sort of show you now. As an aside, I'm horrible at like introductions and stuff, so that's why I've already blown past that. There's going to be a lot of like independent work with this. Like I'll talk at you a little bit in the beginning, but then there'll be a lot of like, I'll give you 15 minutes, 20 minutes, do something, come back. We'll do a lot of sharing. This is not, I don't do a whole lot for people who have not taken my classes before. I don't do a whole lot of like, we're going to do stuff and then I want a project at the end. By the end of this, you should have a ton of stuff that you've already created that will essentially be your project, and you'll add links to, we'll make like a drive folder where you can kind of put all this stuff, and then you will link the drive folder to like the project sheet for the STI credit. But essentially, we're just going to bang out a ton of content over these next 3 days with then some independent work time in between. So it's basically 3 hours today, 3 hours Thursday, 3 hours next Tuesday, which is 9, with the expectation that you're doing a couple of hours in between. And we could talk as the night progresses about if we need to adjust that, if, go a little bit lower, a little bit shorter on Thursday, have a little bit more independent work time, stuff like that. But we'll make sure that you definitely get the work in and the sort of the understanding of this, of how to use Canva. For those of you who don't know me, I am Chris Casal. I'm the computer teacher at Heathcote Elementary School in Scarsdale. Do a ton of stuff with things like Canva, Adobe, iMovie, WeVideo. So a lot of times when I do these things, I use them and I do these classes because I like the platform, but I've also compared it to other platforms that are similar. So I always will kind of reference why you might use one versus the other in a particular situation. And we'll also talk about how I use it in school. And like Mary Latin, who's on the call, is a Heathcote teacher. So she's seen how we've used not Canva per se, but we've used Adobe, which is similar, but then there's differences into like how the program functions. And that's why with any of these things, it's good to have a sense of like what the program is, what it does. And I even find for myself that I'll use Canva for one type of thing, I'll use Adobe for a different type of thing, and I'll use like Google Slides for something else, because you just try to leverage the benefits of each tool. Cool. So I will start off by just sharing my screen and showing you the basics of just kind of getting into Canva and some of those subtleties of the pro account versus like the non-pro account. So canva.com. Now I'm already logged in. Am I? Let's see, once it loads. Yes, I'm already logged in. So I'll log out in a second and then show you, get back to this point. But if any of you have logged in, you'll notice that over here on the left, it says Scarsdale Schools. And it's got this education thing on it. That's what we want. That's giving us, at least in Scarsdale and possibly Edgemont, the full crazy premium. We don't have to pay for it. So if Edgemont doesn't have it yet, like I said, all you have to do is just sort of talk to your IT staff and ask them to sign up for it. It doesn't cost anything. Canva's sort of like Google, like right now they're supporting education and kind of making everything for free. So you set it up. But essentially, if you have used Canva in the past, you have this little drop down, and you'll notice that this is like my original one that was created, like when I just did sign in with Google using my Scarsdale account. but it was pre the setup of the premium version. So that's why I have different projects. Oops. So like under my projects, I have different projects that I've created in here that are different than the ones that I've created in here. And it's fine because I can just toggle between them. What I've been doing, and we'll get more into this, kind of recreating them under the Scarsdale Schools one, because this education account is like a free premium, where before they allowed school districts to kind of connect globally, if you proved that you were with a school, they kind of gave you like, it wasn't free and it wasn't pro, they gave you kind of this mid-range. But once the district as a whole, we then got this like pro level everything, which was this Scarsdale Schools. And you'll notice like Vivian had signed up a while ago and like added me to her team, but it says free, which basically means that a lot of the things are add-ons. Like you don't have access to all the templates, all the clip art, all the stuff. Really what you want is you want to make sure that you've got especially the Scarsdale folks, the Scarsdale Schools education one, because that's going to give you all of the, like I said, the premium things. So let me log out real quick and I'll show you. If Scarsdale folks have never used it, I'll show you what it looks like. So the first time you're doing it with Scarsdale, you do the continue with email, because what'll happen is when you do this, and it might not happen because I was logged in a second ago. For our Scarsdale folks, the first time you do it, it'll route you through that Azure screen. It'll send you to that login screen with sort of that maroon background with the gray window. And then that will, put you in the premium setup. I've noticed that once I've set this up, and once I'm basically authenticated into the organization, now I can sign in with either Google or the email, and then I just have this little toggle right here where I toggle between the different platforms. I'm going to stop sharing for a second. Does that make sense to everyone? Has everyone logged into Canva already? And for the Scarsdale folks, is everyone logged in where you have that Scarsdale Schools team on the left? Because that's sort of the key, is we want to make sure we have that. Now, Edgemont folks, I don't know what you guys have when you log in. Do you have like an Edgemont team? We'll play around with that. But if everyone could get logged into Canva right now, we'll do just sort of a little walkthrough, and then I will sort of give you your first task, give you some time to work. So what we're going to do is I'm going to share my screen again, I'm going to do a couple of quick things. And then for a few minutes, and then I'm going to give you guys your sort of first task, right? So this is the dashboard. Tons of stuff can sometimes be overwhelming, right? You have documents, whiteboards, like Instagram posts, all these things. Buttons up here. Love the buttons, fantastic. They have templates for all these different things. It can be sometimes overwhelming. Now, as a slight aside, as you're watching this load slowly, I'm currently on a DSL internet connection, which some of you might not even be old enough to remember DSL, but it is very, very slow. So my stuff may load a little slower than normal. What I generally like to do is up in the top right, I have that create a design button. And when you do it, it gives you all these suggestions, right? Again, same as everywhere else. But what you could also do is, and I do this a lot because of sort of where we work, which is in a school where most of what we are working with is 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper. I will often do just a custom size, and I'll just do 8.5 by 11. Now, part of the reason why I do this is that, yes, you can make anything and then scale it, right? When you go to print, you can have it scale one way or the other, but often it'll stretch the image or the image won't look natural. When I use Canva for other things, like I have some sort of like, I do IT for some people on the side, like I will use the Instagram square if I know it's going just to Instagram. But a lot of what I design in schools is I know that it's going to be most likely, even if I email it or add to my website, it's also going to most likely be printed on a piece of paper to hang up on a bulletin board or a hallway or something. So a lot of times I'll just do the 8.5, I'll do 8.5 by 11. Now, this is where things get a little bit weird, because Canva, it's not weird. It's just like we have to think sort of the other direction, which is the premise behind designing something is usually done in pixels, which is what px is, not in inches. So, right, so somebody's going to do something that's 3,000 by 2,000 pixels. For the most part, you don't have to worry about that if you're choosing just like the Instagram square or the Facebook header, because it'll do it for you. But when you want a custom size, let's say 8 by 11, you notice it's pixels. It tells you got to be at least 40 pixels, because if I change this to inches right now, you notice it gives me this ridiculous decimal less than 1, because you need to change the unit of measurement first. So when you come in here and it starts with pixels, before you put in 8.5 by 11, change it to inches, then do the 8.5 by 11. Because then that will allow you to make it as like a solid piece of paper. This is one of those super simple things that we had a couple of kids this year. We're like, why does my font look so big? It's only 12. What the heck? They had changed it to like 8.5 by 11 pixels. And then we're trying to work. So like font size 12 was gigantic because the entire document was like less than an inch tall. So it gives you these suggestions. You can play around with them and you'll have time to play around with them. What I like to do though is I like to just start with just a blank design, because it gives me the opportunity to kind of think about what I want, look at different elements, templates, all these things, and we're going to do the quick dime tour of that. But there's some sort of basics that a lot of times people forget, right? Or you forget to do when you go down this rabbit hole. So one of them is something I already didn't do, but I didn't do it on purpose because I want to show you guys how to do it later, which is this is now going to be in my massive like Canva like documents of all my things, just muddled. Canva will allow you, and I'll show you guys in a minute, how to make folders, so you can actually make your designs inside folders, so that'll be easy for you to find instead of just having this massive thing. Similar to Google Drive, right? Google Drive, you always want to make things in folders so you can easily find them. Canva's the same way. Similarly, when you open something up, it's always going to be called untitled design with the dimensions up here in the top right. What's also a little bit weird about Canva, which is sort of like Google and a lot of these things, if I just start typing, Canva STI, it won't change it now, but once I click out of that text box, it changes the file name to whatever the first bit of text is that I made. You may not want that because your first text box may be some super long thing and you just want to make it be, Canva practice or something, right? So you can also then come up here, and call it whatever you want. It will not change the text. So there's always like the first thing, much like in like Google Forms. If anyone's worked with Google Forms, if you don't title your form like as a file name up at the top left, but you put the title of the form in, it'll then make that the file name. Similar idea, but you definitely want to have something up here, because sometimes you may do a design that actually has no text. You may do a design that's collages or things like that. And if you do that, it's not going to pull any text. And you might just have untitled design as your file name. So you want to make sure you have a file name. Pick stuff up, move it around. Very nice, right? It gives you these, you'll notice throughout any of these, and as we go through, you'll have to do more and more, but it gives you, depending on your shapes, essentially, this is your margin. This is essentially your 1-inch margin. That's kind of what that's letting you know, right? It'll let you go outside of it, but it's kind of letting you know that, like, if this is an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, you don't want the text to go to the edge because it's going to get cut off. There's all sorts of other rabbit holes of text you can go down, right? Where you have all these things, drop them in, you just double click, change words, things like that. It gets a little bit tough to work with because they're sometimes hard to see. Right. I generally like just your heading, which is going to be bigger, bold, but you can change your font. You can change your font. You can change your font size. Now, with things like this, with the little crown next to it, what that does is that's letting you know that's essentially, that is, if you were on your personal Gmail account, let's say, and you logged into Canva, that you wouldn't be able to use, right? You would be paid. Like they would let you use it, but if you wanted to save that file, you would have to pay to use that font. We don't have that. We get all of this stuff for free. So that's one of the nice things. If anyone's used Canva in the past that has been limited by what you have available, it's fine. We get all that stuff for free now, but that's just what those little crowns mean. All right, so let's just say that. So that's that. But again, you can change the size. This gives you alignment. You can do bullet points, all normal stuff, right? What's also really nice, but what's really nice is you just move it around. So put things wherever you want. What I like and what I find immensely helpful are the elements. So you can search for anything, like numbers, shapes, graphics. Like they have a ridiculous amount of clip art, audio, video. Like it's bananas, charts, graphs, frames. Like frames is cool because like if you put this frame in, then you put a picture inside of it, it'll auto crop the picture around those curves. Right. So there's tons and tons and tons of assets, which is amazing. And you can do simple things like, I'm going to do a search for school. Now I have graphics, photos, videos, all these things. What's cool is, let's just take a graphic and I put it in. Take my corners. What's nice about Canva too is it won't let you stretch or squish a picture. I'm sure we've all seen kids take like in a Google file, they take the picture, they use those middle buttons, and then the picture gets squished or stretched and elongated. Canva won't let you do that. It forces it when you enlarge it to enlarge in ratio, which is good. But you also have these colors. That what this color is it's the color of the image, so you can change it, which is really nice because maybe you're Scarsdale High School and you want to do maroon and whatever for all your stuff. I tend to do like black and gold because Heath Go's colors are black and gold. What gets really nice is that some of them, we find one that actually, I'll do this. I know. So if I do just the number 1, some elements are like this. When you click on it, you actually get multiple colors. So you can actually change one part of that, and then you can even change the other part of it. So you can mix and match these things. Not every asset allows you to do that, but it's great flexibility to be able to have those and create those sort of custom things, right? And then when you come back, if you look at something else like I think telephone was one I've done in the past. It has like, some of these, let's go see all. I'll find it. There's one that's got like 9 different colors you can choose. So see, like this one's only black. That's the only option I have. The interior is always going to be white. So it's just about playing around with these. What you can also do is you can also upload your own stuff, right? So you can tell I have stuff in here for my classroom. I have Bitmojis, one-to-one logos for tutorials, teachers, whatever. Tons of stuff. What I'm going to have you guys do for a few minutes, actually, before I do that, any questions? Any questions about that quick sort of overview of the different pieces? Everyone good? All right. Just as a starter, I'll give you like 10, 15 minutes. Basically, you're going to do an 8.5 by 11 document, blank, no template, a welcome to my classroom poster, a photo, a graphic, and some text. Doesn't have to be crazy detailed, but just to get familiar with just how those elements, how you put them in, and then how you sort of organize them, change them. And the reason I want you to have a photo and a graphic different is because graphics are the ones where you can actually change on some of them, the colors, the outline color, the interior color, depending on the graphic. Photos, you can't. And while they'll be put in similarly, right, where you can move them around, resize them, once you start messing with them, you'll notice that they kind of function a little bit differently. Like you'll be able to double click on a photo to crop it, but you can't double click on an icon to crop it. There's like subtleties like that. So just it can be a reel. Like you can start making this if you're like, I'm going to start making a reel welcome to my classroom thing. That's fine. If you literally just want to make welcome to my classroom, one picture, one thing, and make it super simple, that's fine too. Just want to give you guys a few minutes to kind of like settle into creating the thing, name the file, add a few pieces, and then we'll take a look at everyone's and we'll move from there. Little sort of warm up. Everyone good? All right, so let's see. It's 6:33. So let's say like 43 would be 10. Yeah, why don't we do like, well, no, 10 minutes is probably not enough. Let's go to like 6:50, right? So like 17 minutes to like I said, you can go as crazy detailed as you want. And even if it's not done and you're just like in the process of just like slapping things together, that's fine too. This is sort of just to get you like toes dipped in the water. Cool. All right. So go forth. Feel free to shut your cameras off if you want. I'm just going to hang out here in case you have any questions, things like that. So, like I said, a document is a document, meaning 8.5 by 11 as a custom size is different than choosing doc. If you choose a template, you run into similar issues where when you look at the template, you're going to be kind of forced into certain sizes or color palettes that then you have to change everything for, because that template is based on those fonts, those sizes, those colors, and things like that. It's not to say you can't change them. You just may see different options. Like you may have an 8.5 by 11 doc template in one tab and just a blank 8.5 by 11 canvas in another. As you're working with them, you may see different text font styles as the top suggested font styles on the other one, because they're the templates, they want to sort of force you into that. It's not to say don't use templates. It's just that sometimes with a template, it's essentially they want you to make it look like that just to change the words. But if you're thinking about redesigning it, you may run into some roadblocks. So a lot of times what I do is I may look at a template and then just make my own version of it. Does that make sense? And it's not to say I would play around, like, and you guys will have time to play around with the templates and stuff. It's just that like sometimes you get locked into these situations where things don't function because they're fixed. Like a document is a fixed text-based thing, which is why you're going to have trouble moving pictures around, putting pictures in the background, things like that. So let's back it up for a second, and then we'll go through some more of these basic things. And what I want to do, though, is make sure that everyone knows while we're in here, and it's fine if you've not done the right thing. That's okay. It's part of the process. It's actually good when people screw up because then we have like real world examples, right? So this is awesome. So a couple things. When you're in here, we have not put our file into a folder yet because we didn't think about it ahead of time. Now it's just in that massive, I know for some of you, this may be the only file you have, so it's fine. But eventually you may have tens, 20s, hundreds of files. You want to have them organized. Canva is really nice because you can go to File and you go to Save to Folder. And when you go to Save to Folder, you're not going to have any. Like I have a whole bunch of folders, right? You can always create a new folder, and you can just call it STI, and then whatever the number of this class is. It's like 6010 or something, I think. So everyone should do that now. Go into your document, go to File. I'll back that, go to File, Save to Folder, and you're going to make a folder, and I want you to call it the name of the course, which is, just call it STI 6010, 6010. So then that way we can start organizing. And that's nice because a lot of times we forget, in theory, the way you keep things organized, whether it's in Drive, whether it's in anything, is like you would go into your folder first before you made something. So it would be made in that folder. But if you don't do that and you forget, it's not a problem. File, Save to Folder. Now I'm going to share because I'll do that so everyone can see it. So File, Save to Folder. I have to make a new folder. I'm going to create new STI 6010. So it just saved it to that folder, right? And you can actually see right here underneath the file name, My First Canva, you can actually see the folder that it's saved in. And then this little cloud with a check, it's kind of like Google's, it auto saves, right? You don't have to keep hitting save, it auto saves. This little icon will disappear. It'll be like saving changes, I think is what it says. And then once it goes solid like this, then that means it's updated and it's saved and it's backed up. What you can then do too, and this is like, doesn't always work in the sense of, for some of you guys who created the doc, you're going to start this over as just an 8.5 by 11 custom size. But with some file formats, you can resize. Now, resize isn't changing it, necessarily from one file format to the other. It's more like it's changing whether it's 8.5 by 11, or it's going to change it to those pixels. It's going to change it to landscape versus portrait, things like that, right? But what's nice about this, and you guys who did the doc can even try this, you can do copy and resize. So what's nice about that is if you do that, you can either resize the original and it just changes it, but then it's going to move everything around. It's going to you're going to have to do some adjustments, or you can copy and resize, which is handy because maybe you make one version of your poster that you want for something, and then you want to use the same content on it, but tweak it to go onto an Instagram post. You can then make this copy, and then you have both versions. They're not connected. You would still have to update them separately, but it would give you the ability to basically not have to reinvent the wheel every time you do this. Is that good so far? Does that all make sense? Any questions at this point? All right, cool. Now, the next little bit, and I'll give you some more time to work, is when we're looking at this. So for example, I've got my text, I grabbed this chalkboard. Now this chalkboard is one like I was talking about before, where this is a graphic, and this has 5 colors within it that you can change. So some graphics are definitely going to be more versatile than others. I can change this to be like blue, and that basically just changed the little pen, the little chalk down here. That's what that changed. Sometimes it gets a little overwhelming when you have something like this. We're like, wow, 6, like what do they do? Like what's the, so click on the purple and change it to, I don't know, pink. That's the eraser. But that's not the eraser, it's just the eraser part. It's not the handle of the eraser, right? So then like the handle of the eraser is something else. Well, let's just go back to that, right? So you can really customize these things, which is nice. Like if you wanted a whiteboard, change it to be a whiteboard, if you liked everything else. It's also nice is undo is up here, the undo arrows. So all that stuff works just like, you can undo that as much as you want, so that those features are still there, which is really helpful. Now, the other thing that happens when you're working with these things is, I could put in, a square, right? So I put in a square. I could change the color of the square, gray. I can change the type of line, right? I can give the square a line. I can give it a dash line. I can make it, the border weight, whatever I want. If I want to round the corners, I can round the corners, right? And then I have this super nice little square. In terms of templates, this is where I kind of would start to make my own. If I wanted to have a look, is I might have this over here, and then I grab text, let's just say rodeo, and then I put this on the box. Now you notice when I do this, that drops the O, because if I take the middle to stretch it or squish it, it does that. But if I take the corner, it'll automatically reduce the font size. And then I just sort of put that in the middle, right? Now, I have these things and I have all these different pieces, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of do this just to show you, right? Things start getting blocked. Canva is nice because it gives you, much like Adobe, Photoshop, those types of programs, it bases these things, everything, whether it's Google Slides, Google Drawing, all these things are stacked, right? The first thing you put in is here, the next thing is here, the next thing is there. The most recent thing is at the top of the stack. Canva does 2 things that are very helpful. They have this position, click on any one of your elements. They have, where is it? Position. You can arrange it much like you would in a Google slideshow, right? Forward, send to back, backwards, bring forwards, whatever. But what's even more helpful is to do layers. Layers actually show you visually what each item is and where it exists in the stack. Now, Canva is also nice because I put in welcome to my classroom before I put in the laptop picture or the box, but it kept it at the top. Canva, artificial intelligence, is smart enough that it basically says you're not going to want your text covered. So even if you toss things in after it, we're going to auto move the text as a higher layer or level than anything else. You want to move things around, it's literally just pick it up and drag it. And now that's on top. So it's really nice because you can, I mean, if you felt like dropping this back here, it'll let you hide the words. Or actually, that's a bad example if I do this one. Like, it'll let you hide the words if you want to, but it just defaults to making sure the words are always at higher levels than any image or any element that might cover them up. So that's really helpful because then you put in a lot of things. You may have stuff overlapping, and it's always, oh, which element is here? Okay, click on that picture. This picture's hidden. You just click on any one element. Doesn't have to be just anything. Go to position, go to layers. You'll be able to see, and then just click and hold and drag to move those around. Cool. Everyone good so far? So I'll give you a few more minutes to work on that poster before we share, knowing a couple of things. If you did it as a doc, try to do the resize and just do 8.5 by 11 and see if that fixes it and makes it not a document, but just a blank 8.5 by 11 canvas. If it doesn't, no problem. Just go back to your dashboard, do a create custom size, 8.5 by 11. Not a document, just an 8.5 by 11 document. For everyone else, keep working on your little poster, but now you can leverage the fact that you know about the layers and how you can easily sort of move things around, hide things behind us, and it's not so much worrying about move to front, move to back. You actually can literally see those layers and be a little bit more particular with what you're doing. Oh, one last thing, actually, which is also related. It groups. You can group like you can't with anything. So what I mean by that is, and I'll show you real fast for anyone who doesn't know. So let's say I want to make rodeo. I can hold down shift and I can click on the laptop. You'll notice they're both actually selected right now here in my layers. And then when I do that, I immediately get this little pop-up thing and it lets me group them. So now if I group them, what that means is if I pick up one, it moves both together. I can always ungroup because maybe I don't want those two things grouped. Maybe what I want is, in terms of kind of what you were asking about, Jen, like maybe you have this text box or this, you just do this shape. You like this look and that's in there. Click one, hold down shift, click the other. And then group. Now that box is grouped and you can actually see it right here as a layer. It's no longer two layers, it's now one layer, and it actually lets you know that it's been grouped. So then what that means is now I can just pick this up and I can move it around and I could even resize it and it'll resize the words together as one group. So grouping things can be very helpful. Working with those layers can be very helpful to just, you know, be creative and not worry about where stuff is. Sound good? All right, so it's 7:06, so we'll say I'll give you 10 minutes. So we'll say like 7:15, and then do some work on it, and then we'll share and just sort of see where people are going with it, and we'll just answer questions. This is just, like I said, this is sort of getting our feet wet, kind of playing around. Sound good? Awesome. All right, so we're gonna pause on it for right now. I'm going to show you, just review a couple of quick things. A couple of people have sent me messages asking about like student access. Students have the same access we do, which is awesome, but it's also a little bit messy because there's not like a real good classroom organizational setup kind of thing yet in Canva. They're working on things and they're working on different integrations and stuff. So we'll talk more like next week about how you might get kids into it, because it's like right now when I've used it with fifth graders, the fifth graders share their projects with us. We have student account passwords, so we can actually log in as them just because we know their passwords. Obviously, middle school, high school, you don't have access to the student passwords. So that becomes a little bit clunkier about, what they may or may not be doing it. So like, there's not a lot of oversight on it, which could be good, could be bad. It's a little bit messy, but we'll get into that. It's doable, totally doable. They have the same access we do, but like, I want to get everyone kind of comfortable using the tool first before we kind of get into the more like nitty gritty of like your classroom workflow. So before we start sharing, I'll highlight just a couple of things that is really nice about Canva, but sometimes it's you overlook sort of the simplicity of it because it is so simple. So essentially everything happens in this bar right here. So for instance, I like click on my picture on my laptop, it tells me it's an image. So, I can crop the image, I can do different rotations, things like that, and see, it'll actually like show me that crop in there. I can move that crop around, or I just press cancel and I'm back to normal. Flip, rotate, animate. We'll get into animation later. It does do some cool simple animations where if this was like a presentation, we'll dip into presentations in either tomorrow or the next day, depending on how we go, where you could actually make things kind of free form animate across the page. Your position, this is stuff like transparency. So if you want to drop that down, make it more see-through, less see-through, things like that. So when you're talking about objects, whether it be like a graphic or those boxes, those shapes, you want to change the color of those. The color is going to be up here as well. So this would be the interior color of that box. This then would be the border color. Now it gets a little bit weird. You kind of got to remember where you're at, because like right now this looks exactly the same because it is the same in terms of the color palette. And you notice it changes a little bit when you do it, right? So like you just have to be careful and sort of recognize which thing you're selected, because then if I choose that, and I come back to here and I do, orange, right? That's how you change those colors. This would be the line thickness of the border. Obviously you could always do no border, dashes, things like that, change them. But again, now if this was ungrouped, I would only see the colors for the lines and the shapes. Since it's grouped together, I also get the text-based editing features. So essentially everything happens for every object sort of in this bar right here. And then, you go over there some other things, whether you're underlining the transparency. If you run out of space, essentially for all those different formatting features, you just look for those three dots. There's going to be more stuff under there. So you find everything kind of on the left, whether it be elements, texts, whatever. That's where you find the things. Once they're in your palette, it's this bar right across the top of it. Cool. All right. So nobody has to be done. It's fine. Just see where we're going to go. I will just go down the participant list. So Carrie, Carrie Burke, do you want to share your screen? Just walk us through. And while you're sharing, like, share what's been challenging, what's been easy, whatever. And then this is what sort of we'll work through that, because I'm sure everyone is having similar questions and things of that nature. Are you able to share, Carrie? All right, Carrie might not be there. So let's go, Carla.
Yes, I can share. Hold on one second.
Oh, you're on the two different devices, right?
Yeah.
That's fine. Yeah, just put your phone up to it or whatever, and just sort of talk to us about, any issues you've been having, or what because I'm sure everyone has similar things.
All right. So this is what I've got. So, the only issue I feel like I encountered was the first initial issue that I had, where I couldn't edit where I wanted the.
Because you made it because you had started as a doc, and that was why you were locked in, right?
Yeah, and then I was able to scale things, change colors. Like this was an image that I changed colors with. This I could change colors with. The fonts as well. The only thing that I didn't really incorporate was, I'd say, like a photograph, because I just didn't feel like it looked as artsy as like I was hoping for.
No, and that's
Um,
fine. And sometimes that's part of this process. So you kind of got to throw a whole bunch of stuff at it and kind of work through the look you're going for. And sometimes there'll be all photos, sometimes there'll be no photos, sometimes it'll make sense to match them.
mm-hmm.
You know, that's awesome.
Cool, thank you.
Sweet. How about let's see, is it, I'm gonna mess this up. Elizaveta? I apologize for
Elizaveta.
Elizaveta. I was close, but why don't if you could share, that would be awesome.
Sure. Right. So I'm a French teacher in the middle school. So I was creating a poster in French. And I played with it. So I used the template first, but then I realized it's easier for me to create my own font. So I used your advice because it was easier just to maneuver based on what I would like it to be. And then I played around to group those two. Like, as you can see, when I move it, they're grouped together. It doesn't mean necessarily I want to keep it that way, but I just want to make sure I remember how to do it.
No, totally. And that's a great point about like you can play with the templates, but often what you have in your head isn't sort of what they had in their head. And a lot of times those templates are basically just leave the templates the same, just change the words in them. Whereas, right, but if they give you inspiration, that's awesome. No, solid. Yeah. And this is definitely like the play around version. So it's all good, grouping stuff, not grouping stuff. That's the whole point. It's
right now. I forgot how to stop sharing.
there should be a red button that says stop sharing.
Okay, red button.
I can also stop it for you.
Oh, I see. Oh,
yep.
Okay.
Let's see. Elise, can you share and walk us through what you've been toying with? You're muted. Oops.
I am muted now.
Yep, you're good now.
Okay. So in all honesty, I've been using Canva for like a little bit. So I was kind of going back, if you will, like to the basics and seeing, I didn't even know, for example, like there was a photo option. So I was just playing around with kind of seeing what was available and using like the different sizes that you were suggesting, because a lot of the stuff that I had done like in the past was all templated, and it was exactly what you said. It was me trying to like finagle what was already out there, and rather than just start, from where my head was at, I was trying to fit it into these templates. So it's nice just to kind of play around with the font and the colors, and I don't know if anyone saw yet. There's like a effects button. I found it today. That I didn't see before. So I was playing around with like the different things that you can do just with the lettering. So I didn't get very far.
You're muted.
Thank you.
Not muted.
No, yeah. And no, and the effects buttons are cool. Like you can, I will go into that too. Like you can make, it's like the Instagram type filters that you can put onto different things, and so you can change sort of the whole look and feel with the kind of different, things like that. And there are other things too. Like I know Jen was asking earlier about things like removing the background. Yeah, there's a ton of other sort of like little add-on features that we will definitely get into as we go through this, and because then you'll eventually know how to kind of weave all these things together to figure out what are you making for yourself, how might you use this with kids, what that workflow is. We're going to build up to that once people sort of get a taste for what can be created. Cool. Haley. Share.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi. Yeah, I am a maximalist. And so I just kind of threw a ton of stuff down. And this is sort of where I am now.
Cool.
Having a lot of fun playing with the program. It is like kind of frustrating to me actually that I can't change the scale of pictures. Like, I'm so used to doing this kind of stuff in like PowerPoint or like Keynote, where I feel like I have like slightly more control, especially like the ability to delete some parts of an image that I like. But I like the amount of designs that are like transparent and that I can like not have to worry about removing backgrounds from. So I don't know. Yeah, that's where I am.
Totally. No, and that's like, I was saying in the beginning was you sort of have the difference between you start to work with these and you see like the benefits of this versus the benefits of something else, or like where you would use Keynote versus where you would use this, and then you might have like, I tend to use Canva for posters, whether it be like a classroom poster, like a, when we need posters for like open house or whatever, I'll make them in Canva. But if I'm doing a presentation, I kind of default to like Google Slides just because it's so like quick and seamless and clean and fast and like minimal, so it's like I use these different programs sort of for different purposes. And yeah, you find that and then you figure out sort of what works for you and what doesn't. And then even though you may have a bunch of these programs, they become very useful and efficient because you know exactly why you're going to Keynote and exactly why you're going to Canva. And then it also then allows you to mix and match. Like maybe you create a design in Canva that goes into your Keynote presentation. And I've done stuff like that before where I've created really nice graphics that I want to use in a presentation. So I'll create them in Canva, and we'll talk eventually about how you save these things out, the different sharing formats and stuff. I'll save it out, drop it into a Google Slide presentation that I'm giving to parents or something. And then it's just a great looking graphic that I could never have made I could have made a Google drawing, but it would never have looked the same. And yeah, you sort of find those kind of crossover points. How about let's see, Emily, are you on, Emily? Yes, you're there, right? Where are you? Right there in the middle. And yeah, just unmute and then share.
Okay, can you see it?
Yep.
Oh yeah, okay. So I'm not a teacher, I'm a counselor, but something actually that we've been talking about is making some signs to kind of welcome people into the counseling office. So I did that. I took the challenge on of the photos, which I agree, like sometimes they just don't they don't match with the rest of the graphics. So I spent a long time trying to find photos that actually I felt like fit in a little bit. But yeah, that's it.
Nice. That's awesome. And that's the thing, like what's nice about Canva is the amount of stuff. It could also be overwhelming, right? The amount of elements that they have. But what's nice is it's the variety of elements where you can kind of look through super high quality photos and be like, oh my God, these are amazing. I'm going to use these. But at the same time, you can be like, well, you know what? I just need some good clip art. And their clip art is actually really good clip art. It's not like cheesy, junky, like basic clip art. So it gives you that flexibility to find those different feelings all within the same program. But it definitely can be overwhelming sometimes when you're like looking for something and you're scrolling through like 1,000 images and 1,000 icons. It's like, but once you get comfortable with it, like I tend to use, and we're going to talk too about like once you do these things, like I've created my own templates where I essentially just kind of, once I found the color scheme, the size, the font, the color, all that, I kind of leave it and I just keep doing file, make a copy, file, make a copy. And then I just end up having, I've created my own template in a sense, like it's not locked into any sort of structure, but I have like the black bar there, I have the gold bar there, I have the whatever. And that gives you that ability to kind of clear the noise a little bit from all those different things. Now, as a slight aside, I saw Jen dropped into the chat. Can you drop this into a Google site? Yeah, you can. These things can export in a variety of ways. So it depends on how you want to do it. So like, and I'll actually, we'll deviate and I'll show you that real quick. like when you're done, there's this share button. Now you can share to people, and you can actually have people work on this together. This is kind of how I've done it with kids. Like I just found it's the easiest way to do it with kids. Like you can share, they'll make one, they'll share with the teacher, then you have editing access. You can have the collaboration, or you can download. And when you download, you can choose the different file formats, right? JPEG, PNG, PDF, whatever it is. So you can, however you want to put it into your website, right? You make a poster and you want it to be downloadable, but you don't want it to be visible on the website. Do a PDF and you upload it to Drive, goes onto the website, they click it, they download it, open it up. You want to put just an image on your Google site, download it as a PNG, drop it straight into the Google site, and it's right there. Things like the MP4 video or the GIF, that's if once we get into doing things like animation, you can literally just have the little basketball swirling around your poster. And this is what's nice, is you can have a poster with a basketball on it. You can animate that basketball to float around the poster. When you download it as a JPEG, a PNG, a PDF, some standard format, the basketball is just going to be wherever it starts, like wherever it starts in the animation. But then you want to download it as a GIF, then it'll just do that animation and it'll loop it. Or it'll make it just like a short X second, 5-second video clip that has a beginning and an end. So those are nice options for this, that it gives you that flexibility where create one thing in Canva, but you can export it in a variety of ways. And we will dip in more like, over the next couple of days into the different things, not just an 8.5 by 11, but we'll talk about presentations. We'll talk about the little movie things. Some are better than others, right? I think like Canva right now is really, really good at like static graphic design, sort of the stuff that we're doing. It's okay at some of the other things. Like my personal preference for like web-based simple video would be, aside from like a Wii video, would be like Adobe, because Adobe Creative Cloud, I think, handles their video a little bit cleaner than Canva does, but Canva is getting better. So like you have tons of flexibility and options with this. So let's see, how about, let me go back to my participants. Jen, you want to show us what you're working on?
So I tried one of the templates, which is the first one, and I just filled in my information and made a link to my teacher site. And then it came with a second page. So I did like a letter. And originally, the background was like that, and I couldn't figure out how to get rid of this part because usually I remove it in another program. So I just made the thing white so it would all blend in.
No, that's awesome. And like that's a prime example with that little animation down there is if you save it out as a JPEG or a PDF, it'll just be the static large, like whatever the biggest bit of that image is. But if you download it as a GIF or a movie, you would actually see that animation. Since you have 2 pages, if you downloaded it as a PDF, it would be a 2-page PDF. If you downloaded it as a JPEG, a PNG, those are the only 2 image file formats, it would give you 2 files. It would basically give you like project 1, page 1, project 1, page 2. It would be 2 separate image files. So that's just something to be aware of. But it could, that's actually, I've done that a ton of times where I've made something where I know I'm going to be making a bunch of varying degrees. Like, we do this 5th grade capstone and we have a lot of like similar documentation about different parts of capstone. It's like 1 file. And then I just like page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4. So when I want to print it, download it as a PDF, it's a 6-page PDF. I hit print and then I just hand out the separate pages as needed. We did that for our 5th grade, like, I don't want to call them diplomas, certificates. We made them in Canva. And basically what we did was it just made 27 pages and it was all the kids' names. And what's super cool is, I'm definitely going to show you guys, is you can actually, it'll automate. So what we actually did was you make the 1-page template, you import the data. So we imported we did 1 class at a time. So we imported just a list of the kids' names, like a CSV. and then it auto created 26 pages or 24 pages with all the kids' names on it. So that was pretty cool. Like you can definitely batch create things and have Canva help you with some of that batch creation. And we're definitely going to get into that. That's a little bit more, it's not super high level, which is really nice. It's actually, it seems super complicated, but it's actually once you do it, you're like, oh my God, that was so easy. That's amazing. It did it for me. But it's definitely just understanding that like you kind of have to have your spreadsheet with your list so that you can upload that to Canva, and then Canva does it for you. It's fantastic. Before we go on anything else, anyone have questions, anything coming up that has been addressed, anything like that? Why don't we do this? Why don't we take like, it's 7:37. Why don't we take like, we'll go to 7:50, just take a break. If anyone needs to go get water, go to the bathroom, whatever. So like 7:50, just like, you know, stretch the legs or whatnot. You know what I'm saying? You can keep working on it if you want to, but we'll be back at 7:50. Cool. And yes, I forgot to, an hour recording, I'll add to the recording at the end. After the phone call's over, I'll add at the end of the video the magic eraser, the remove background, all that stuff, because I forgot to unrecord it during our break. All right, we'll get a couple more folks to share. How about Kevin?
So I teach chemistry. I played around with the graphics, changing the color. I mean, I've used Canva before, but I didn't know that you could change the color, so I found that pretty cool. Played around with some shapes behind there and transparency of the shapes and the photograph in the background, to make the text pop a little more. And then just played around with a bunch of different fonts too.
Yeah, that's awesome, right? And that's like sort of what today's about, is just kind of sort of discovering those small little nuances that will sort of change the game a little bit as we get into more complex things going forward. Awesome. Yeah, and I like the change of the color is so much fun because, like I said, you can brand it to your school, you could brand it to your team, your class, whatever it is, and it's nice because then it even though it's the one generic piece of clip art, you kind of are making it personal to you and your room or whatever it may be. Michelle, you want to?
Yeah, hold on. Let me share my screen. Okay. So first, can you guys see it?
Yeah.
Okay, I was just starting with like this, which I was like, that's pretty good for me. But then I saw everybody else have like background images, which I didn't even think about doing because I saw on Haley's, she searched background. So I was like, oh, I'll just try that. So then I did, and I made that one instead. But I think I would probably like print this one off. I don't like printing lots of color. And then I made a second one for my second class, which was there, which is like more classic and kind of matches something I've made before for my Google Classroom. So I kind of liked that. So yeah, I was having a lot of fun like everybody else. This one was a template actually. So I did one template and one that I could kind of make on my own. And the templates were like limiting, but that was the one I had to like previously use a template for like a banner for Google Classroom. So I just kind of found the same one and then found this so it could kind of like match it. But it was definitely easier to kind of do what I wanted without the template, like you said. But yeah, I've just been messing around with the effects too. Like I found one that like moved, a graphic that moved.
Yeah.
But I don't know, like, would it move if I put it into something else though, like a Google Classroom or something?
It would move if you saved it out as a GIF or the MPEG video. The difference between the two would be the MPEG video will actually like have a play button and will stop and start, meaning there'll be a beginning and then an end. Like it'll do its animation, then it'll stop. The GIF will be basically a looped, never ending image. So like if you're doing a small animation on a poster, flyer, document type thing, you would save it out as a GIF, and that's what you would embed in your Google site. That's what you would send to kids, and it would be basically just an animated image.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, no doubt. That's awesome. Let's see, Vicky.
Hello. I'm going to attempt to share my screen. I'm using the Zoom app, and it's not a tab. So let's see if this works here. It says I have a security and privacy issue. I have to go to system preferences.
Oh yeah, don't worry about it, because that'll make you, I can help you second, like offline, because you'll have to change those settings that will force you to quit Zoom and relaunch Zoom. Don't worry about it. We'll get you squared away before next time. All good. Trisha.
Okay.
Yeah, no worries, Vicky. Don't sweat it. Trisha.
Hi, I'm just unmuting. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. All right. So I just need 1 minute because it's not in my sharing area. So I've never used Canva before, so mine is not as intricate as some of the other people's.
All
But
good.
it was definitely fun to use, and it's really cool. Let me see where it is. Okay. Now I got to go back to Zoom, make you big, share my screen. Okay. So, I made this and I just fooled around with all the things that we talked about. So here was the font that I used, I guess the heading, and here was a graphic, and I grouped this, which I guess I can't, oh yeah, there you go. So I somehow, I don't know how I did it, I got my image in the blank computer screen. I guess it was a frame. And then I linked the flowers and the desk and the computer screen together. So that's what I was playing with today.
Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, that probably was a frame. We'll talk about frames in a minute. Or actually, we could talk about them now, because frames are pretty cool, and you have to sort of really understand what they are and how they function, because sometimes I'll even forget, and I'll be like, what the heck happened to my picture? And I was like, oh, right, I put a frame in, not a square. So I'll jump in here real quick, because frames can be super useful, right? So let me get out of this. Let me delete that. So, and as people were talking about, like some folks mentioned, like searching for backgrounds and things. So you can, when you search elements, it gives you, again, lines, shapes, graphics, it gives you all these things, but you're actually not limited to this. So you can do things like texture. And when you do texture, right, maybe you want, I don't know, this one, like parchment paper, right? You can then click the 3 dots, set image as background. And then what that does is that would then take that image and make it a background. It's essentially a graphic. So anything can be a background, and then Canva will make it fit. It won't stretch it or squish it. It'll just enlarge it. So if you're trying to make an image a background, you may lose, or it may not crop the way you want it to, because it will not, like if you use an image as a background in Google Slides and it doesn't fit the slide dimension, Google will stretch it to fit. Canva won't do that. Canva will enlarge it to fit, but it won't stretch it. So, because then there's a subtle difference. The difference is, like, your portrait image scaled sideways would get stretched in Google Slides, whereas Canva, you would lose the top and bottom because it would have to make it so large to fit the screen. But then you also have frames. So frames are cool because when we look at these, they just have this hill to background, because it's not the hill. Like that's what it's going to be. So like you had used this one, which is the computer screen. Then whatever this is your placeholder, this hill and this clouds. It's a placeholder. So any image that you toss into it, just drag and drop, it'll automatically snap into it. So what's cool about that is you can go find things like this, right? Like if that's my frame, and then I take the same, upload, and I put it in, it then does that effect to that image based on that frame. So frames can be very useful because it can give you that kind of like professional cut, brush stroke look or whatever with your image, just by choosing whichever one you want. So let me go back to it and show you what's also cool is it will give you things like these 3 frames, right? So try that other way. So you take this one And if I come here to my uploads and I'll use the same photo, put it in, it just goes into one. So then you can actually make it look like a film strip where you're putting different photos in to different frames on the strip. You could also theoretically put the same picture in, and when it's in and you double click on it, you could actually reposition it within. So this is the type of thing where you could fake sort of like the one picture cut across 3 different sections. So frames are very useful in that way because it gives you a lot of flexibility, a lot of options to put them inside a laptop screen, inside a desktop screen, or in a shape, right? It'll make them a triangle, it'll make them an oval, it'll make them stuff like that. So those are really cool. Postage stamp. These will actually cut lines across your picture. This will give you the exterior border. You can do them in letters. They have all these different things. So like, it's a great rabbit hole to go down because it allows you to make the picture look a little bit more interesting than just a flat rectangular square. It can give it some character. It can give it some texture. You could make, you know, Miss Brito's class or whatever out of letters and then drop a whole bunch of different pictures into those letters that represents the classroom. And then the letters will actually have pictures of the kids, things like that. So frames are very cool that way. Right. Now, some other things, when you search frames, you'll see things like this, right? Like where that looks like, actually, let me choose a better one. Like this, right? So that looks like a frame, but it's not a like capital F frame in the way that these are frames. Meaning that when I come over here and I take this picture and I drag it over, it's not going to put it inside of that frame. Like it covered it. It took over that shape. It doesn't snap into the centerpiece the same way it does. See, it doesn't actually put it in. Like that frame is literally just a picture of a frame. Like that's all that is. So you have to be careful about some of these because some of these that the real capital F frames are these that have that skyline background, the hill and the clouds, and those are the ones that will change the shape of the picture to match that. These things that look like these are just photos of frames. You know, this like, here, let's go see all on this one. You know, if I were to take like this, right, I can't necessarily, let me move it out of the way. Hold on. Oops, that made it a background. Sometimes you just gotta be careful where you're dragging it on the page, right? So there's that. Now, if I go to put my photos in, we'll use like the same photo. See, it's not putting it in to that because that's a picture of these things. So you would have to kind of align them behind. So see, it's transparent. You would have to play around with just positioning 3 pictures with this over top of it. So it's more, this is more of a photo of pictures than it is an actual frame. So that's where some of these differences come into play, is when you want to actually put your image in it, you have to find the one that has the landscape. That's going to be the difference. Everyone cool with that? All right. Now, let's see. How about Joan? What have you been working on?
Oh, here we go. I was just, when you were talking, one of my questions was, how do I do a frame? And when you were talking, I started playing with it. So let's see what I can get, if I can get back to it. Okay, so here it is. I had, as you can see, I put this in here and I couldn't find a way of moving it to the back. But I'll show you what let me go backwards.
Oh, so nice. The film. Yeah, I like that.
I was just playing with that and I couldn't get the picture to come through on that, the one with the 3.
Yeah, so when you have those frames in, you just have to make sure you drop the picture sort of right into that landscaped area and then it'll snap into it.
But I was putting that frame over my picture.
Other way around.
I have to do it. I have to have the frame first.
For a frame first, and then you drag the picture into that landscape, that cartoony landscape. So you put the frame you want in, then you drag your images into the places on the frame or into the actual frame.
Okay, this one here that I did, I actually.
Well, that's not a frame. That's just, yeah, that's just like that's a clip art or whatever of a film strip.
What did I do?
That's fine. This one, yeah. That's you just found like a film strip clip art and then put a picture in the middle of it, which works as well. It's just that wasn't originally a frame.
Oh, it wasn't?
No.
Okay. I could have sworn I got it from there. The other thing, I was trying to do something better with the font.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't seem to, when you get these here, they're pretty limited. I wanted to try and, is there, can you put a shadow on them or?
So it depends on some of them. So what we'll do is actually, I can walk this. That's a good question. So let's take a look at ways we can kind of mess with the fonts in that way. So if I open this up, let me actually do this. Just add a page so it's blank, right? So if I take text and I'll just add, all right, so there's my headline. Now, with my text, there's a few things I can do, right? I can choose different fonts, which are basically just your fonts. The text styles are somewhat limiting, but there's a reason for that. Part of the reason for this is that these are the basic sort of headings, subheadings, and bodies, because it wants to do, like for screen readers, accessibility things like shadows on them often become difficult for text readers to read, like screen readers, but there's a way to fake it and kind of work around it. The way you sort of fake it and work around it is, I'm just going to duplicate that, and I'm just going to offset it like that, and then I'm just going to change the color to gray, and then I'm going to go to the position, and all these things work together, and I'm just going to move that up there. And then now we've essentially just faked the shadow. Similarly, and then I'm going to group those together, right? So now it's one piece that I can move around, and it looks like I have a shadow, behind my words. One other thing you can do, let me ungroup that. Actually, no, I'll leave that grouped. I'll do another one. Right, you have this, and you've got your light bulb, and you want it to go around your light bulb. It may not work going around the light bulb, but what you may do is you may say, all right, I'm actually going to not do other heading. I'm just going to do other, and then I'm going to do heading in a separate box. What that's then going to allow you to do is then position those how you actually want them, and then you can actually rotate the text. So you might have to break out your text into separate text boxes so you can kind of manipulate them in that way. So those are two kind of ways to sort of manipulate them in that regard. There are effects on the text which can do some of that more formally, right? So some of these like shadows, more of a haze, it might not be perfect. Neon, it starts getting a little bit weird. It's not perfect. It will also do like curves, but it may not be the actual curve you want. You can certainly play around with it. Like you bring it out like that, it's going to just, it takes it on that circle, but you can't necessarily adjust the spacing on the letters, right? So then you say none, it goes back to the beginning. So there are ways you can play with the text in effects. Let me just undo all that. I'll go back to it so you can see it.
So just quickly, show me again, when you get the text, where did you get those effects?
So when I just click on the text box, it says effects up here.
Oh,
You see it?
Yeah.
So, and it gives you some, but like, again, it's just like you have one curve, right? You don't have a ton. Like you have one type of outline. So there's some of it in here but sometimes these aren't the look I'm going for. So I will just literally do a duplicate, and then I'll just put one behind and sort of offset it. And I kind of create my own shadow or outline. Do you know what I'm saying? But yeah, that's where you will play with some of those effects. And it's sort of like the templates. Like sometimes these will work for you, sometimes they won't. You kind of got to make it yourself.
Okay. The other question I had is the templates. I know that Jen said she used a template. So does that mean all the templates I saw have a lot of text on them? So you erase all the text and then
erase the text, change the text, but often those templates,
but they don't have a blank, like ones that aren't covered with text.
That would just be what we've done, which is you create like you pick a size and it's white, and then you build it yourself. You build, the boxes, or you build the fonts, or you build the things. A lot of times with the templates is you kind of get locked into their color scheme. You kind of get locked into their backgrounds. You kind of get locked into their layout. Templates, they really just want you to change the words. That's sort of the premise. Maybe you change the colors of the elements, but templates don't really want to be manipulated. Like they kind of want to be fixed, which is why if you're doing something where you want a lot of flexibility, you start blank. Not even as a doc. You just go like, oh, I'm going to print this out like a piece of paper and I'm going to hand it out like a newsletter. You don't even do doc. You just do custom size 8.5 by 11. So you just have something that looks like a piece of paper, functions like a piece of paper, but is essentially a totally blank canvas that allows you to manipulate as you see fit.
Yeah, I made the mistake of having a doc first, and
no
then
docs.
I couldn't manipulate anything.
Totally. No docs. I'm not, definitely no docs because they're super limiting. They just want you to do text. And like I said, like some of you guys have noticed is that templates, they're cool because it's like done for you, but they can be limiting in customization. So it's like part of the point of this, especially tonight, is kind of getting you guys to see that you don't need templates. You guys are all crafty enough and skilled enough to know how you want it to look. And the Canva is so simple and clean that it's actually very easy to make your own thing from scratch look good. You know what I mean? And that's sort of the point of like this basic sort of first day of this before we get into like crazy complicated stuff, over the next couple of days, Thursday and then Tuesday. But that was solid. Let's see. Mary, you haven't gone yet, right?
No, not yet. So I do use Canva quite a bit, but I typically do stick with the templates just because it's easier. But this one I didn't use a template, and I didn't realize you could group images and like graphics together, so I was playing around with that. But yeah. And I uploaded pictures too.
Yeah. And that's kind of what we're gonna leave off with in a minute, is sort of like, now we've been playing around with these things, but actually adding your own content that you can then manipulate with and work within the confines of their thing. And that's also a perfect example of like those two images, is if you wanted to give those some style snazziness or whatever, you put in like 2 round frames or something, and then your pictures go in there. Then you can actually turn those into ovals, or you can turn them into circles, or you could turn them into a different shape if you felt like you wanted to give them, a different texture.
Okay.
Awesome. Kirsten, I don't think you've gone, right?
So I, like some other people, am brand new to Canva. And I kept getting distracted by all the stuff I was finding out you could do with it. So this is what I came up with so far. It was funny about the frame thing because I put in a frame that was not a frame to put a picture in. So then I took that out and I was going to find a photo to put in there. But yeah, this is what I came up with so far.
Awesome.
Thank you.
No, and that's the thing, is there's a big rabbit hole to go down, and even when you've been using it a while, you keep finding new things. But the other aspect is, and this is sort of something I always try to remind everybody whenever I work with people, is like, these guys, these companies, however you want to refer to them, they're always updating. So like, you may use Canva every day, and then like on Monday you look at it and you're like, oh snap, there's different stuff, because they do that. So don't ever be bummed or overwhelmed or whatever, thinking that you're not dialed in if new things happen, because like they're constantly updating things. I mean, Google does literally thousands of updates, something like 30,000 updates a year Google does to their stuff.
Well,
No
they're
matter-
whatever it is because they kept, I don't know what it's called, magic. It's like their recommendations for you. And I like loved everything, single thing. I kept opening it and looking at more and more. So yeah.
Totally. Right. And that's like that new AI. Now everyone's into AI, right? Like,
yeah.
And again, like I was saying, there's all these image AI. So now it's these magic recommendations based on what you looked for, based on what you put in. And it's a rabbit hole, because there's, I don't know, there's probably got to be hundreds of thousands of assets they have of
There's
backgrounds
lots of cool
and
stuff.
images.
Yeah.
Totally. And sometimes you need that. Sometimes you need to just not have like a purpose. And you just goes for, all of us for any program. Sometimes we just need to have the smallest of purpose, and we just like fumble about and play without like a real contract. Because sometimes you're like, I have to make a newsletter to my parents. You get like locked into that. It's got to be a newsletter, so sometimes you just need that time to kind of follow the magic recommendations and see where they take you, and then sometimes you're just like, yeah, that's too much, I don't want to deal with that, and you walk away from it, and that's fine too. Kyle.
Hello, everyone.
What you got?
Let me. Okay, sorry, I have to change my settings, I guess, to share my screen.
No problem. So what I'll do is, when we get done with this, I know Vicky has a similar problem. When we're done, if you two want to stay on for a couple of minutes, I'll tell you where to go and how to do that. And then because it'll tell you to restart Zoom, so you would get kicked out of the call.
Okay, so I can't share my screen with you, I guess.
Yeah, and that's fine for now.
Okay, I did learn something from you, because I had been changing the angle in effects. I didn't notice the little arrows where you could sort of just change the angle. So that made it a lot more efficient than having to actually figure out the angle of the image.
Totally. And actually, and that brings up something good, which we haven't really talked about, but I'll show you, is when you're looking at these things, so this little circle, right, that does the rotation. But what you can also see is, as you rotate, it actually gives you that little box. So that's negative 11 degrees. So if you want to be like super crazy like I am, where everything has to look the same, like you like it like that, I would then rotate all my other things on varying versions of 12, 24, and I would go around so that they'd all be somewhat the same angle. Similarly, if we put in let me put in the number 1, right? So if I put this in, let me just get rid of other. I can make this smaller, and as I make this smaller with the corner, I can pick it up just from the middle. I can grab it from anywhere. I still have the rotation thing, right? So I can still change the orientation of it. Go back to 0. But more importantly, when I'm resizing this, I can see that that's a 1.4 by 1.4 width and height. And what's nice about that is I can decide that, like, all right, I want to make it 1 by 1. I make it 1 by 1. So then when I put in number 2, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to make number 2 be 1 by 1 also. And then when you come down, you can actually line them up. Now, I have noticed that Canva is a little bit nuanced, and 1 by 1 isn't always 1 by 1. Because if I drag it down, see, I can still move it a wee bit, and it still says 1 by 1. So you look for those lines to line up. So that means those two are at the top, right? And now you see, if I drag this, I can actually see these are perfectly lined up, because the top line is saying that the top of both images is the same height. The bottom one is the same height. Then that center one means the center line of both of them is the same. So sometimes that number that it gives you isn't always purely accurate, because sometimes you can drag it a little bit past the 1 and it's not quite the same. See, that still says 1 by 1, but now I'm a little bit smaller. So I don't know why it's not accurate, and I don't like the fact that you can't just type in, like, I want it to be this or that. But that gives you the ability to know what the angle is when you rotate, but then also making sure that all of your images or all of your elements are the same size if you have a whole bunch of them together. And then obviously something that's really nice, I mean, obviously I shouldn't say that, but if you had all those numbers or all those things in a row, you could then hold down Shift, click on all of them, group them. Then once they're lined up at that initial size, and once they're all same height, same center, group them, then you can resize the entire line all at one time. And it'll resize all of them together, which is nice. And that's what's helpful about the grouping and the resizing. Who has not gotten? Have we gotten everyone? Aside from the people who can't share their screen, who did I miss? Did I miss anyone?
Me, Sandra.
Oh, sorry, Sandra, go ahead.
That's okay.
No, because I know we've been bouncing around and sort of demoing and answering questions in between, so I've sort of lost track of where I'm on my list.
Can you see it? Am I doing right?
Yep.
So I misunderstood frames at the beginning. So I was actually looking for frames of Europe and frames of Africa, but I couldn't find them. So this actually worked out better, because then I just found the flags and I was playing around with grouping, not grouping, but positioning. So which comes first, which comes second, and things like that. And then, yeah, that's it.
Awesome.
Just some of the colors and simple.
That's great. And one thing, just while this is up, and one thing to keep in mind as we go through this and as you're designing is, like we had looked at the beginning, where when you move things around, it gives you the kind of interior red frame, which is like the margins. Because one thing that would happen with yours, if you were to print yours out, below Francais, part of that box would probably get cut off, because the printer wouldn't be able to print straight to the edge, because that edge in Canva, since this is not a document, it's just an 8.5 by 11 canvas.
Right.
If you were to put anything to the edge of this canvas, Canva would allow you to do it, because you can have an image that goes to the edge of the frame, right? But when you go to print it, the printer might not be able to handle it and might put on like a, 1/4 inch margin all the way around. So you always want to be careful about having things go right up to the edges of any of these things, mostly because the context we live in is printing, right? Most of our stuff, like, yes, we do put stuff on our websites, we do put stuff in like Google Classroom, but a lot of our stuff, we kind of are still in this like mindset of everything comes out of the printer at some point. So you always kind of want to be mindful of that. If any of this stuff might ever see a piece of physical paper, always give yourself a little bit of a white border around it, just so then that way nothing actually gets cut off, because the printer usually adds, even if it's a millimeter or two, around the edge.
I misunderstood. I thought you said at the beginning that purple line here on the side was that was the margin, like.
No, that's the edge of the physical document. That's the edge of the physical page.
Okay.
I'll show you the thing that it gives when there's like an interior, which is, I'll share mine real fast. So let's come out here. I'll add a page, and I'll just toss in some text. So even though this is not a document, when I move this, it gives me that. See that purple? It sort of is recognizing that it's like the AI. It's recognizing that this is text. It's recognizing that this is this size. So it's sort of saying, you want to keep all your text inside of here, because essentially anything out to the left of that purple, even though that's the page, which is blue, this is sort of for a fact it's not going to get cut off. Now, we know that for the most part, these are going to be digital assets that we're making. They're rarely going to be printed on a paper. You can cheat it a little bit, but you definitely don't want to do this, because that H may end up getting cut off depending on the printer that you're using. Does that make sense?
God, no, how did you get that purple inside, whereas my purple was on the outside?
You had blue on the outside.
Okay.
You had blue on the outside. it generally works a little. I think it recognizes more text, and I don't know if it'll recognize it. Let's see. I don't know if it'll recognize it with a shape. It's just that the AI of it just recognizes that that's text, and that it should stay within a margin. It should stay not to the edge. But let's take a look at what happens if I toss a shape in. Let's get that. Well, let's just put that in. Yeah, it'll let. Oh, there it goes. See, just purple. It's inside. Like the actual document is blue. That's the whole page. Not I shouldn't say document. That's the whole thing. Anything that comes off here, you'll notice it actually starts to cut off. It doesn't show it to you because doesn't exist. But this is sort of like, it just kind of lets you know that this is sort of your interior center space.
Right.
It's not saying you have to stay in this space, but if you come all the way down to here, the very bottom, you may run the risk of part of that block getting cut off. Now, it may not matter because if this is just floating, it may not matter that there's a little bit of printer-based margin around it. But if you had a box that had like a border on it, what it might happen is when you go to print it on you would see this black border, you would see these side black borders, but then you might not see a bottom black border because the printer just stops printing before the edge of the paper. So it's always good just to leave yourself a little bit of a gap before the edge of the canvas. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. But now like I'm trying to move things because now I realize too much is at the edge of the canvas and one of my images won't move at all. Is there a reason for that? Like, did I somehow like glue it?
You might, so you can lock things. So if you click on an element and go to the three dots, there is a lock. So it is possible to lock things. You could also look and see where that element is when you go into the position and look at the layers. That piece may be so far buried below other things that you may have to like move it.
It was locked. I don't know how I did that.
There you go. See, these things happen. It's fine. This is what we're doing, right? We're working off the cobwebs and we're getting ourselves set up for like crazy stuff in the next couple of days. So it's all good. But yeah, I mean, that's just something to be aware of. Now, some of you guys had, backgrounds and stuff that went right to the edge. That's totally fine because they're just colors, they're textures, they're the math class one with all the different, equations and stuff. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that. Pointed out on yours, Sandra, only because you had just one box. You only had one solid box on your entire page. So the minute you have just that one element, then that would look weird if it had a border or if something else because it stands out. But if you are being abstract and having flowers go off the end and stuff, totally cool. Nothing wrong with that. As long as core elements like your picture or text or stuff like that has some breathing room before the edge of the canvas.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. I think we got everyone now. Is there anyone else we forgot?
I think we go. I don't have anything really too crazy to show.
Oh yeah, got it, Megan. Yeah, totally. Sorry about that. But
I
yeah.
have just one thing. I like everything I did, I think is pretty much what everybody else did, but I have one thing I think that's cool that I did. I'm gonna hope that this works for me to share. Okay, it doesn't. No, my settings also don't work like some of the other folks. But I did get to play around with the AI, like generating something in the background that I just think is really cool. So I'll figure out the setting thing and then
totally. We'll take care of. There's three of you, I think, that have that issue. I think it's Kyle, Vicky, and you, Megan, are the three. So we'll get that certain. And Carrie, did you go? Did you show?
No, I don't even see you here now. Do you hear me?
I do hear you. Yep.
Okay, hold on. I don't see anybody. I see you. I don't see everybody.
It's all right. As long as
here we are.
There we go.
Wait a minute. No, I have you. I have to show you on my other computer because I did it on my little. Here, can you see this?
Hold on. Let's do this. No, bring it up a little bit. There you go. Up a little bit more. Oh, there you go. Welcome to art. Right on.
Super simple.
Yeah.
I get overwhelmed very easily. I'm new to Canva. and I'm taking it all in and taking notes. And I don't know whether to do it on the screen, like everybody's doing it on the, on the, the one computer, but I've got two going on. So I've got this one, and then I've got the Meet on the other one. But apparently everybody's like sharing their screen. So maybe I should do it on. I want to play more. More.
Totally. Now, so two things, and you can put that down because
okay. Yeah.
We'll talk and that's a good point. Like, and it's tough because we're on vacation. We don't have like our smart boards in front of us for our big screens or whatever. I would recommend, and we'll get everyone settled, that you at least have, even if you're working on Canva on another screen, it's synced, right? It's linked, it's cloud-based. So you can work on it on one machine, but then also have it open on the screen you're zooming on, just so that way you can share if you have problems, like we can help you troubleshoot, things like that. It just makes it a little bit more efficient to kind of do
have
that.
It on both.
Have it on both, totally, because it's the same file. It'll just be like refresh to update after changes are made or whatever. Refresh.
Okay.
Number two, if you're doing it on the iPad, awesome. There's actually an iPad app. The Canva iPad app is awesome, and there's still a lot there. It's still overwhelming on content, but I think it looks a little bit less overwhelming because they know that it's specifically designed for the iPad screen.
iPad. Okay.
And you would log into it the same way.
That's helpful. And you were saying like to do it in documents at first, like always doing documents?
Never.
No,
never.
Documents.
The opposite. Never. Because a document is a document. It's text-based. It's going to limit you based on the fact that it wants text to be the primary thing. What we started with was a custom size 8.5 by 11 blank canvas.
Blank canvas.
We're fake. It was just a custom size, and it just gives us this blank white space. It happens to be the same size as a piece of paper. And I only do that because if we ever wanted to print something, we pretty much only have one way to print in school, right? And it's on 8.5 by 11, unless you go to the Xerox and tray 5 and put in whatever. But we all know how much fun it is to change paper size of the trays and the Xeroxes at school. So that's why 8.5 by 11 is just generally the easiest thing to do, because you know exactly how it's going to look. You know exactly, and it's super easy to print, things like that.
Custom white canvas. That's what you.
Yeah, just custom size. You just go create custom size, and 8.5 by 11. It'll suggest resume. It'll suggest newsletter. You ignore all that, and you basically are creating your own template, blank working area that happens to be the same size as a piece of paper.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's helpful.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, that, other, designers, like when I use Canva a ton for this. I do the IT for an inn in Maine, and I do like their website. I do their social media. I do stuff like that. So for them, I will do, like, if we're doing an Instagram post, in Canva, I will go to create new design Instagram, create new design, like Facebook posts. Like, I know that I'm using those very specific
sizes
for their things. 99.9% of the stuff I do in school is just custom size 8.5 by 11. Or if I know I'm going to do it on legal paper, 8.5 by 14.
Well, what if it's a poster?
I still do it that size because and then on the poster printer will auto scale the 8.5 by 11 to whatever size. Okay. As we go forward and you get more comfortable with this, if and I've done this, I have a section of my my lab that is an old school chalkboard that's in the middle of like bulletin boards, like caulk bulletin boards. There's a gap above the chalkboard before the top of the caulkboard that's something like 19 inches tall and 100 inches long. So I knew I wanted to print out a crazy, ridiculous, high quality poster for that space. So in Canva, I made a custom size, like 19 inches by 100 inches. And it was a little hard to work with. I had to like sit there and mirror it to the smart board so it was nice and big. And I worked in that. But then it gave me a ridiculously high quality thing that when I went to the poster printer and I said, print it this size, the poster printer spit it out. And then I just had to trim it a little bit because it printed it out on 24-inch paper. So I had to trim the paper a little bit. But it gave me that one solid long 100-inch piece of paper with super high quality images, because everything I put into it put into it knowing it was going to be that big.
Yeah.
but that's rare.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 9 times out of 10, and I'll show you guys. 9 times out of 10, everything we do, oops, no, I don't want to do that. That's fine. Let's go to projects. So like I did, it might be under my other one because I've been too lazy to move them over. But so like this, for instance, right? This is done 8.5 by 11, right? It's just Adobe Express thing. This is like my own template where I know the sizes, all that stuff. But when I download this, if I share this and I go to download, I'll do like a PDF for printing. And then that's high quality. When I download that, I've taken these things and I've scaled these things up to like A1, A0 poster size, and A0 is like 36 by 28 or something. And they scale and they're fully readable. You can always do this too, which is go to like something like PNG, and it's going to tell you it's like 1200 by 2000. You could actually boost the pixels, like, and it'll be a larger, more high quality file size. So if you know you're going to do it, similarly, you could also compress it. If you know you have to email it to somebody or something, you can make the file size smaller. But that's what's nice about this is you could, at the end, manipulate this so that it can be a super ridiculously high quality thing that will print fine on your black and white Epson whatever, but then will also print really nicely on a poster printer.
Okay.
And just for reference, the poster printers won't scale a document. They will only scale image files or PDFs, or at least the poster printers we have in the district. Other thing is, if any of you are working with things sort of to Jen's point about removing backgrounds, if any of your elements if you're making something and you want it to be you're going to add it to a slideshow presentation or something like that, you want PNG, because then that will allow you to have a transparent background. So what that would do is that would turn any of that white space transparent. So on a piece of paper, it would look like it was white, but if I then took this file and put it over another image, I would see the other image behind it. So it's nice because it gives you that option to basically have a transparent background on anything you do. But that only works with PNG.
Great.
Cool.
Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions before we move on?
I have one question, and I don't want to belabor the point.
Go for it.
Let me just share with you ones, but I'm still talking about frames.
Totally.
How do I okay, so I figured out how to do the circle frame. How do I get a line around it?
So some of them will allow you, some of them won't. But if you click on the way you can tell is if you click on it.
Yep.
Then you would look up top and then you see, so you can do that. But if you look up top, see how it says like edit photo flip, and see how there's no lines there? That means it doesn't allow you to edit the border. It doesn't allow you to do it. Now, it's not to say you can't. This is where you sort of hack the system, which is I would get a circle.
Oh, I know how to do that. Get a circle and then
just put this right on top of it, and you kind of fake it till you make it, so it looks like there's a border around it.
Okay.
So that's where that layering and the position helps, because you can toss those in and you do like one at a time. So then that way you get it totally centered on that circle where the circle is just slightly larger. Then shift click, group them together, boom, it's done. Then you make your next one, shift click, boom. Then you can then size them together. A little bit of extra work, but sometimes you have to do that. The system is awesome. Canva is amazing, has all these tools, doesn't necessarily have everything exactly how you want it. Sometimes you kind of have to like hack it, right? You got to kind of hack the system to like kind of get it to look and function the way you want.
Right. Okay. I just wasn't sure if I was missing a setting there.
Nope. And sometimes some different things. That's why it's always key to look at that bar, because just like with those graphics, like with changing the colors, sometimes there's one color to change. Sometimes there's two, sometimes there's five. It just depends on the piece that you put in. But all of your formatting things are going to be across that bar at the top. That's going to be where you're going to find all the things that are capable for the item you have selected. And then that bar will change depending on the item you select. Cool. All right. Any other questions? Everyone good? All right. So here's what we're going to do. So I'm going to give you some homework because we're going to meet again. This is, like I said, it's 9 hours with the class. We got to have some time in between. I'm not going to give you a ton of homework tonight because we only have a couple of days. Or we only have one day basically. But then we're going to meet on Thursday, same time, 6 to 9. I actually have to bounce a little bit early on Thursday. So we'll probably work through. We won't like take that extra, like the little breaks and stuff like that. We'll just kind of power through. And I'll leave you when I have to go. I'll leave you with some sort of work to do for sort of Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Then Tuesday is the last class. And then we'll have a bunch of stuff. And then at the end of Tuesday, you don't have to be finished. You can be finished whenever, but whatever I leave you with, sort of the assignments, you'll drop them in the folder eventually. And whenever you get them done, that's finished. That's your project. If they're done during the class, awesome. Not, put them in the folder, and then you just fill out the thing eventually. Trisha, what's up? Mute. You gotta unmute, Trisha.
Sorry. Is
Okay.
Tuesday next week 6 to 9 also?
Yes.
Thank you.
And that's the last one. So it's basically like the 9 hours of live, the expectation that I'm not gonna give you a ton of work, but I mean, it'll hopefully be useful work and like practical things. So any questions before we talk about what you need to work on before Thursday? Everyone good? Yeah.
Oh, I have one question.
Totally.
It's Carrie. If I'm auditing, I'm going to try to do the assignments, but I'm kind of just trying to I kind of wish I wasn't auditing, because if I wasn't auditing, I would be more compelled to do but because it's a little overwhelming for me at this moment, but I'm auditing. So I'm not like getting it for, okay.
Look, I'm flexible with this stuff. My whole point, and some of you, like people like Sandra have taken a bunch, Lisa have taken my STIs, like they'll tell you, like, I'm more concerned that you get something like viable out of this. Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like sometimes people have 37 half-made things in their folder. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. Because they've like, no, but I've figured out that like, whatever. I'm like, okay. Practical use, you know what I'm saying? I want you to walk away and be like, oh, that makes sense. I know this thing now. But maybe it's, oh my God, Canva's too overwhelming. I'm not going to use it. I'm cool with that too. Like
however it
benefits you. And sometimes benefiting you is knowing that you don't want to use it. And that's okay too.
Okay. My other question is, whatever I do on my iPad, I don't have to it's in the cloud. So it's whatever, it's there. Totally. It's in my folder. I put it in my folder and I could just okay.
Totally. Right. Yeah. And that's what's great about Canva too, is that like you can be on your Chromebook, you can be on your iMac, you can be on your whatever. As long as you're signing in with the same account, you're just like Google, you're going to have access to all of your stuff, which is super helpful, especially when you're uploading photos, because you upload photos, they're in your account now. You don't have to re-upload them from a different device. And that leads me to what we're actually going to do, which is this. Whoops, wrong button. So I am in here, and did I close? Oh, I accidentally closed the tabs. So let me just open this up. This is the one we're working on. So like you'll have noticed I kept going to uploads, and I was uploading images. I've uploaded some images. You can upload videos. You can upload audio if you want to. You can connect to your other accounts. Nothing says you shouldn't or should, doesn't matter. I just haven't, because I tend to make tutorials which are screenshot based, so they all live on my desktop, so I just drag them up. But if you know you have stuff in Google Drive, you can totally connect Google Drive. Canva's like approved, or especially Scarsdale, I should say, like Scarsdale, it's approved. In theory, you might not want to connect your Edgemont one until you've checked with your Edgemont IT to make sure it's cool. But then basically just like wherever, just have, images on your desktop, you drag them up. And that's super helpful, because then you can actually start putting things in, making tutorials, things like that, right? Now, Jen asks, are we sharing the fully made Canva STI? Yeah, so eventually what you're going to end up doing, and we're going to talk about that, Jen, is the fact that there's different ways to share. So this Canva folder is going to operate like most of my STIs do, where we're just going to make a bunch of stuff in this folder. You can make that folder shareable and turn that in as a Canva folder, giving the STI access to it because they have access to Canva as well. Edgemont, you may have to download that folder and put it into your drive, because I don't know. I know you guys get like the way your stuff is approved is slightly different from the Scarsdale stuff. So your approvers in Edgemont might not have Canva access to it. Like they may want to see it via Drive. But that's the nice thing about Canva is that we have this flexibility where we can actually share direct from Canva, just like we do for anything Google. Key is you have it. So regardless of how we share it, doesn't matter. It's all in that one place and we have it and it's easy to get out. So one of the things is going to be, sorry, dog is jumping up behind me. So we have all these things. Think about for this next project, we started doing this little like welcome to my classroom thing. Now, to make this stuff useful, you're going to think in sort of two contexts. One is something more detailed, whether it be a newsletter, whether it be an open house one pager. Some teachers have done like single page things that are like handouts where it's just like, here's an overview of curriculum, you know, where it's a little bit more detailed. It's not quite as, and I'll stop sharing this for a second, where it's not quite as sort of simple as like welcome to my classroom with a couple things. Let's add some more elements to it, right? Where you are going to add a little bit of paragraph text, maybe, you know, you want it to be readable, but you want it to start having your vibe, your texture. And that's the other sort of thing to think about is now that we're going to start creating things you're actually going to use in class. So think about, do you have a class color scheme? Do you have, you know, things that are kind of consistent in your class, almost creating your own templates for yourself where you're like, oh, you know, I love teal and whatever, you know, rose red, fine. Start thinking about how you might work those colors in from a design standpoint of, I'm not going to like slather with colors, but like I said, I have, you know, Heathcote's gold and black. Page is white, but I have like a little gold line that goes underneath my headline. You know, I'll bring that up as the example. So start thinking about, and then this next thing that you design, whether it be like an open house flyer, an open house newsletter, something that you're going to hand out, like this is like one of my templates, right? And this template, essentially, I always have this. I always have the Heathcote logo in it. This, I'll make a copy of this thing. I'll just change the title. So this is my black, this is my gold. So I always have that gold bar there to sort of separate the main idea from the sub idea. I always have just a body of text. So this is like heading, subheading, body of text. Sometimes it's more descriptive, sometimes it's less. What I tend to do is I tend to use this black bar to separate sections, either vertically or I'll rotate it to separate horizontally. But then all of my tutorials, and I can actually show you, let me jump over to this one so you can see, is I have like everything, and you can kind of get a sense here, but I'll open a bunch of these up. Like this is our capstone schedule. Similar idea, right? Similar, it's got my same concept. For this one, I just kind of move the gold bar down here, but it's taking those same elements. So it's the idea that I want you guys to start thinking in terms of like, you know, here's this with photos of the kids and stuff. Similar, looks a little bit different, but it's still like branded Heathcote, meaning it's still got the logo, it's still got the title. This is a little bit different. It's a little bit more special. This is one of those things that is an 8.5 by 11 page, but then we print it out 24 by 32 or whatever. We print out these massive posters and we hang them on the wall of the building. So as you're making this new thing, this next thing that you are theoretically or even legitimately going to hand out to parents, or let's think about it in terms of this next thing you're going to make, this, whether it be a newsletter, a one pager for open house, something like that, is going to be the first thing you give to somebody other than students, parents, administrators, whatever. And think about having sort of that color scheme or designing it in a way where you're like, okay, every time I make from here on, I'm going to have sort of the same elements, so everything has a similar look and feel. What's up, Michelle?
At the high school, we don't make anything like this. Like, I don't give anything to a parent or an admin. That would be like ever.
Okay, fair point. So you guys do syllabuses? Like, what do you guys give out? No, that's fine.
We don't give out anything to parents. Nothing. We keep it all
no.
secret. We don't share grades.
It's Scarsdale High School, man. They just accept that we're awesome. No, is there something like a one-page thing that like a syllabus you would give to kids, even, let's say, that part of the idea is I want you to start actually mixing in more text.
Yeah, sometimes I give out, I don't usually print it out, but yeah, I have like a welcome to ninth grade handout situation, or I could do something. I was thinking about, I'm trying to make, last year I made just on Word doc, like on Google Docs, some very basic sheets for like writing, like how to write a thesis, but could I make something like that?
Oh,
that's like
100%. Yeah. Essentially, really, it's like we did this thing with that just today. Big text, big picture, but whatever, fine, right? Like that's the little sort of artsy thing. Now I want you to start thinking about how do I work in larger bodies of text, but still have some of those fun elements like the background image or the texture, the color, whatever, but how do I work in larger bodies of text and make it more like a tutorial or a syllabus or a how to, like something, but at the same time thinking about whatever you design between
or even like how to sign up for Google Classroom because they've never had Google Classroom before, so I can make something like that.
100%. 100%. Yeah. And you can mix in, that's where you can mix in a screenshot, and you put in a screenshot with an arrow that points to something with a little like paragraph text that says, use your school Gmail. Exactly. And also, but do it with an eye, and this goes for everyone, with an eye towards how it looks and how it feels, and the fonts you choose and the colors you choose are going to be the baseline for everything else you do. We'll do different things, but essentially everything that comes out of your classroom or your space should have a look and a feel that the kids, the teachers, the parent, whomever, will then start to have it be recognizable that this is something out of X's classroom. Does that make sense? Starting to develop a little bit like design consistency. Does that make sense? Is everyone good with that? And this one that we have here that we just made today, feel free to add pages to it to practice. I have like 37-page long Canva files where I just go into them and I'll just mess around and jack stuff up, and I'll just try things. So feel free to use this as like your play space, your sandbox for testing things out before you go on and make something else. And if you start making things and do file, make a copy, that's fine too. Like if you're just sort of want to have different versions, it's all good. Everyone good? All right, so I will see you Thursday at 6, and we'll crank and power through since we'll end and it's also too, we're ending a little bit late today, so we'll end a little bit early Thursday. I'll leave you with then some other things that we will dive into next on Thursday. We'll dive into like their presentation format. We'll talk about animations. We'll talk about some of these other things. Then at the end of Thursday, leading into Tuesday, we will talk about the different ways you can share with kids, which is going to be different based on grade levels, based on how much you want the kids to have their own templates. You can create templates and give them to the kids that they actually have to fill out like in baseline, if you wanted. So things like that. Sound good? Awesome. And if anyone wants to stay on, I can walk you through how to change your settings so that once we're done, you can actually change them. But otherwise, I will see everyone at 6 on Thursday. Same link, same Zoom link. Cool. Cheers. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.